A foreigner enters a country and gets a taxi. On his way to the hotel, he points at a tall building and asks the driver, "How long did it take to build that building?" The driver responds, 2 years. 2 years! In my country, it would have taken only 2 months, the foreigner said. After a while, the foreigner again asked, "How long did it take to build that building?" pointing at a taller building. The driver responds, 3 years. 3 years! In my country, it would have taken only 1 year, the foreigner said. Some more time passes. The foreigner again asked, "How long did it take to build that building?" Pointing at the tallest building, the driver, feeling his country's reputation on the line, said, 1 month. The foreigner, not to be outdone, said, 1 month. In my country, it would have taken only 15 days. A few minutes later, they pass by the country's tallest and most famous building. The foreigner naturally asks, "How long did it take to build that building?" The driver sighs and says, "How do I tell you this?" The foreigner looks confused and asks, "Tell me what?" The driver says, "On my way to the airport this morning, there was no building there." A woman goes on a business trip overseas, leaving her husband behind to look after the house and kids. After a few days, she calls up to see how everything is. "Everything's fine," he says. "The kids are finally sleeping okay without you here, and my boss has given me an extra week off until you're back. Oh, I forgot to say, the cat's dead. She was hit by a car." "What?" says the wife. "Are you serious? Why couldn't you have broken it to me more gently?" "How do you mean?" "You know how much I loved her. You could have lied to me and just built it up gradually. Like, you could have said she was stuck on the roof, and then tomorrow told me that the fire brigade was coming over to rescue her, and the day after that she'd fallen and broken her leg, and then on Friday you could tell me that she passed peacefully in her sleep. Don't just blurt out, 'The cat's dead.'" The man apologizes, and his wife hangs up, angry at him. After a few days, she calls back to apologize. "I'm sorry I snapped," she says. "These meetings have just been really stressful. How are you all doing?" "We're all good here," says the man. "Johnny got a certificate for swimming 100 meters, and Molly says she wants a pony for Christmas. Oh, I nearly forgot. Your mom is stuck on the roof." A man decides to start a business. He puts a billboard on the door saying, "If we can cure you, you have to pay $100. If we can't, you get $500. A doctor sees the billboard and decides to get in and win $500. He says that his sense of taste is gone. The man says to his assistant, "Can you please give him the medicine, 9 or 23? The doctor drinks it and immediately spits it and yells, "This is gasoline." The man then says, "Great, your taste is back, now give us $100. The doctor comes back the next day and says, "My sense of hearing is gone. I can't hear anything." The man says to his assistant, "Can you please give him the medicine, 9 or 23? The doctor says, "No, not the gasoline." The man says, "Great, your hearing is back now. Give us $100. The doctor comes back the next day and says, "My sense of sight is gone. I can't see anything." The man says, "I'm sorry, we can't cure that. Here's $500, and hands him $20. The doctor says, "This is only $20. The man replies, "Great, your sight is back. Now give us $100. A mother-in-law arrives home from the mall to find her son-in-law boiling angry and hurriedly packing his suitcase. "What happened?" she asks anxiously. "What happened? I'll tell you what happened. I sent an email to my wife telling her I was coming home today from my business trip. I get home, and guess what I found? Yes, your daughter, my wife, with a guy in our marital bed. This is unforgivable. The end of our marriage. I'm done. I'm leaving forever." Calm down, my son, says his mother-in-law. "There is something very odd going on here. My daughter would never do such a thing. There must be a simple explanation. I'll go speak to her immediately and find out what happened." Moments later, the mother-in-law comes back with a big smile. "I told you there must be a simple explanation." She didn't get the email. A despondent young woman who had lost her job and her house had decided to commit suicide. She was walking along a bridge across the harbor, getting the nerve to jump in when a young man saw her. "Don't do it," he called out. He looked at her and realized she was incredibly beautiful. He came closer. "What's wrong?" he asked. The woman told him. "Okay, here's the thing," he said. "I'm a crew member on a ship that leaves for Europe tomorrow morning. How about you come with me on the ship? I'll bring you food and drink." He slid his arm around her. "I keep you happy. You keep me happy." She agreed. After all, there wasn't much else to do. She didn't have family. The man was quite handsome as well. No harm in trying. The next morning, he hid her in one of the lifeboats on the ship with a pillow and a blanket. Every night, he brought her 3 sandwiches and a piece of fruit, and they made love until dawn. One day, about a week after the affair started, the captain was doing his rounds and found her inside one of the lifeboats. "What the hell are you doing here?" She explained what was going on. "I get food and a trip to Europe, and he gets to screw me. He sure does, sweetheart. This is the Sydney Harbor ferry." Once there were 4 businessmen. They were sitting on a bench in a hospital waiting room because their wives were having babies. A nurse comes over and says to the first businessman, "Congratulations, your wife had a baby." The man says, "What a coincidence. I'm the president of..." and one. The nurse goes away. Then the nurse comes back and says to the second businessman, "Congratulations, your wife had twins." The man says, "What a coincidence. I'm the owner of the Minnesota Twins." The nurse goes away. The nurse comes back and says to the third businessman, "Congratulations, your wife had triplets." The man says, "What a coincidence. I work for Triple Crown." The nurse goes away. The nurse comes back and sees the fourth businessman alone on the bench crying. She asks, "Why are you crying?" The man replies, "I work for 7-Up." A man on a train gets up and moves to the doors. A conductor notices and says, "Sorry, sir, this train doesn't stop at the next station on a Sunday night." Seeing how disappointed he is, the conductor says, "It does slow down going through the station, though. Perhaps there is a way I could help you if you like." So as the train slows down, the conductor takes hold of the man's coat collar and lifts him out over the platform. "Start running in the air so you don't fall over as you touch the ground." The man starts running in the air as the conductor lowers him, and he has so much momentum as he hits the platform that he runs past his carriage and comes alongside the next one. The door of that carriage opens, and a passenger reaches out, grabs his coat collar, and lifts him inside, slamming the door, saying, "You're lucky there, mate. This train doesn't stop here on a Sunday night." 4 people were riding in a compartment on a train in Crimea. An old lady, a beautiful young woman, a Ukrainian man, and a Russian soldier. The train enters a tunnel, and it's suddenly pitch dark. Nobody can see a thing. There is a sound of a kiss and a sound of a slap, and when the train exits the tunnel, the Russian soldier is nursing a painful red slap mark on his cheek. The old woman thinks, "That serves him right, trying to take advantage of that young woman in the darkness. I'm glad she stood up to him." The Russian soldier thinks, "That cunning Ukrainian man. He kisses the lady and I cop the slap." The young woman thinks, "That serves that soldier right, trying to take advantage of people in the darkness. But I wonder why he tried to kiss the old woman instead of me." The Ukrainian man thinks, "Ha! I just kissed the back of my hand and I get to slap a Russian soldier." John and David were both patients in a mental hospital. One day, while they were walking, they passed the hospital swimming pool, and John suddenly dove into the deep end. He sank to the bottom and stayed there. David promptly jumped in and saved him, swimming to the bottom of the pool and pulling John out. The medical director came to know of David's heroic act. He immediately ordered that David be discharged from the hospital, as he now considered him to be okay. The doctor said, "David, we have good news and bad news for you. The good news is that we are going to discharge you because you have regained your sanity. Since you were able to jump in and save another patient, you must be mentally stable. The bad news is that the patient that you saved hung himself in the bathroom and died after all." David replied, "Dr. John didn't hang himself. I hung him there to dry." A nun and a priest are playing golf. The priest is teeing off at the first hole. The ball flies across the fairway towards the green, but lands meters from the hole. "Oh, God damn it, I missed!" The nun scolds the priest. "Father, you ought to be careful. You of all people should know that if you continue to blaspheme like that, surely the Lord will strike you down with lightning." At the green, again the priest takes his shot. But the ball rolls past the hole, coming to a stop just a few inches away from it. Oh, God damn it, I missed again. Again, the nun warns him. Father, watch your language. Take the Lord's name in vain again, and surely he will strike you down with lightning. The priest takes his putter and puts the ball towards the hole in what should be an incredibly easy shot. Unfortunately, the ball skims the side of the hole and overshoots, coming to rest just next to it. "Oh, God damn it, how could I miss that?" exclaims the priest. Suddenly, there's a huge thunderclap and bright flash of lightning, and the priest finds himself standing all alone on the golf course, and then a voice booms from above. "Oh, God damn it, I missed." Two priests were playing golf. Father Bob hit his ball into the woods on his first swing. "Damn it, that totally missed," he cursed. "You shouldn't curse Father Bob," said Father Michael, "or God might punish you." Father Bob apologized, and they went on playing. On his next swing, Father Bob hit his ball into the sand pit. "Damn it, that totally missed," he cursed again. Again, Father Michael warned, "Do not utter such words, Father Bob, lest God punishes you for it." Father Bob apologized again, and they continued playing. On his third swing, Father Bob hit his ball into the pond. "Damn it, that totally missed," cursed Father Bob once again. Before Father Michael could say anything, an ominous dark cloud suddenly gathered out of the blue sky, and vicious lightning came down and struck Father Michael, killing him instantly. Father Bob was completely stunned. Before he could understand what was happening in front of him, he heard a thunderous, deep voice coming from the sky. "Damn it, that totally missed!" A young man who was also an avid golfer found himself with a few hours to spare one afternoon. He figured if he hurried and played very fast, he could get in 9 holes before he had to head home. Just as he was about to tee off, an old gentleman shuffled onto the tee and asked if he could accompany the young man as he was golfing alone. Not being able to say no, he allowed the old gent to join him. To his surprise, the old man played fairly quickly. He didn't hit the ball far, but plodded along consistently and didn't waste much time. Finally, they reached the 9th fairway, and the young man found himself with a tough shot. There was a large pine tree right in front of his ball, and it was directly between his ball and the green. After several minutes of debating how to hit the shot, the old man finally said, "You know, when I was your age, I'd hit the ball right over that tree." With that challenge placed before him, the youngster swung hard, hit the ball up, right smack into the top of the tree trunk, and it thudded back on the ground not a foot from where it had originally lay. The old man offered one more comment. "Of course, when I was your age, that pine tree was only 3 feet tall." 3 writers, Al, Ben, and Carl, who were attending a writing convention, booked a 3-bedroom suite on the 75th floor of a hotel. When they arrived back at the hotel from the convention, the receptionist told them, "I'm terribly sorry, but all the elevators are broken. In the meantime, you will have to take the stairs." Now, Al was a writer of funny stories, Ben was a writer of scary stories, and Carl was a writer of sad stories. The 3 of them agreed that, to make it less boring, Al would tell the other 2 his funniest stories while they climbed from floors 1 to 25. Ben would tell his scariest stories from floors 26 to 50, and Carl would tell his saddest stories from floors 51 to 75. They started to climb the stairs, and Al started to tell funny stories. By the time they reached the 25th floor, Ben and Carl were laughing hysterically. Then Ben started to tell scary stories. By the time they reached the 50th floor, Al and Carl were hugging each other in fear. Then Carl started to tell sad stories. "I'll tell my saddest story of all first," he said. "There once was a man named Carl who left the hotel room key in the car." John, while not a brilliant scholar, was a gifted portrait artist. Over a short number of years, his fame grew, and soon people from all over the country were coming to his town to get him to paint their likenesses. One day, a beautiful young woman arrived at his house in a stretch limo and asked if he would paint her in the nude. This being the first time anyone had made such a request, he was a bit perturbed, particularly when the woman told him that money was no object. In fact, she was willing to pay up to £10,000. Not wanting to get into any marital strife, he asked her to wait while he went into the house to confer with Mary, his wife. They talked much about the rightness and wrongness of it. It was hard to make the decision, but finally his wife agreed on one condition. So in a few minutes he returned. "My wife says it's okay," he said. "It will be my pleasure to paint your portrait in the nude, but I will have to at least leave my socks on so I have a place to wipe my brushes." A housewife sat down with her neighbor for coffee, looking distressed. She sighed and said, "That bastard husband of mine lost our rent money playing poker, and then he actually suggested I sleep with the landlord to cover it." Her neighbor gasped. "Oh no! You didn't actually do it, did you?" The housewife took a sip of her coffee and smirked. "I have to admit I did, though with certain misgivings, I might add. What I haven't done, though, is tell my husband the rent is paid up for 6 months. A man is walking slowly along the beach when he notices an unusual glass bottle just at the waterside. He picks it up and opens it. To his amazement, a genie appears. "I have been in that bottle for 1,000 years, and as you have released me, I will grant you your greatest wish," says he. "Well," says the man, "I would really like to go and see my sister in America, but I'm terrified of boats and airplanes. Could you build me a motorway?" "I certainly could," says the genie. "But have you thought of the disruption and adverse environmental impact that all of that concrete and steel would have on the ocean? Is there anything else you wish? I am having problems with my marriage. Is there anything you can do to help me understand my wife?" said the man. "Do you want a 4 or 6-lane motorway?" says the genie. A business was looking for office help and puts a sign on the window. The sign reads, "Help wanted. We are an equal opportunity employer looking for someone good with computers, Word, and Excel, and who is bilingual." One day, a dog walks up, sees the sign, and goes inside. He looks at the receptionist, looks back at the sign, and barks. Figuring out what the dog came here for, the receptionist gets the office manager, who looks at the dog surprised. However, the dog looked so confident that the manager led him into the office, where the dog jumped on a chair and looked at the manager. The manager sits down, looks back at the dog, and says, "I can't hire you. The sign says that you have to be able to use a computer and Word." The dog jumps down, walks to a computer, and begins to create a Word document, drafting a letter for the manager. Caught off guard, but unconvinced, the manager says, "The sign also says you have to be good with Excel." The dog then goes on to create a perfect spreadsheet that works flawlessly the first time. Dumbfounded, the manager looks at the dog and says, "I realize that you are a very intelligent dog with some interesting abilities. However, I still can't hire you." The dog jumps down and walks over to a copy of the sign, putting his paw on the phrase "equal opportunity employer." The manager says, "Yes, we are an equal opportunity employer. However, the sign also says you need to be bilingual." The dog looks at the manager confidently and says, "Meow." A man has his mother-in-law move in with him when she loses her job. About a week later, he returns home from his job and finds her lying on the floor unconscious. He calls 911. The ambulance comes and takes her off to the hospital. He calls his wife and tells her she may have to cut her business trip short, but he'll keep her posted. He gets to the hospital and waits outside the surgery, nervous and pacing. Soon the doctor comes out and says he has some good news and some bad news. "Give me the bad news first, Doc." "Well, your mother-in-law had a massive stroke. She's lost her ability to speak and can only cackle like a chicken." The man nods his head. "She's also lost all motor control of her arms and legs, so not only won't she be able to walk, she won't even be able to feed herself. You'll have to feed her baby food for the rest of her life, every day, 3 times a day." Somberly, the man nods, so the doctor continues. "Without any motor control, she'll also be incontinent, so she'll have to wear diapers for the rest of her life. You'll have to clean her and put a new diaper on her several times a day for the rest of her life." The man nods, processing all this information in his brain, then looks to the doctor and asks, "That's some pretty bad news, but you said you had some good news. What's the good news?" "The good news is, I'm just joking with you. She died." two women friends had gone out for a girls' night out and had been decidedly overenthusiastic on the cocktails. Incredibly drunk and walking home, they suddenly realized they both needed to pee. They were very near a graveyard, and one of them suggested they do their business behind a headstone or something. The first woman had nothing to wipe with, so she took off her panties, used them, and threw them away. Her friend, however, was wearing an expensive underwear set and didn't want to ruin hers, but was lucky enough to salvage a large ribbon from a wreath that was on a grave and proceeded to wipe herself with it. After finishing, they made their way home. The next day, the first woman's husband phones the other husband and says, "These damn girls' nights out have got to stop. My wife came home last night without her panties." "That's nothing," said the other. "Mine came back with a sympathy card stuck between the cheeks of her butt that said, 'From all of us at the fire station, we'll never forget you.'" An elderly priest, his eyes sparkling with good humor, turned to the younger priest beside him and said, "I must say your idea to replace the first few pews with plush, theater-style seats was inspired. It's remarkable how quickly those seats fill up now." The younger priest chuckled softly and gave a modest nod as the elder priest went on. "And I'll admit, when you suggested giving the hymns a modern twist, I was skeptical. But bringing in that rock and roll gospel choir has truly revitalized the congregation. It's wonderful to see every seat filled all the way to the balcony." "Thank you, Father," the younger priest replied, his tone humble, yet pleased. The elder priest patted him on the shoulder, his expression kind. "Your enthusiasm and fresh ideas have been such a blessing to our parish. Truly, most of your innovations have been marvelous." The younger priest detected a hint of hesitation in the older man's voice and braced himself for what was coming. Sure enough, the elder priest continued. "That being said, I think you may have gone a step too far with the drive-through confessional." "But, Father," the young priest exclaimed, leaning forward earnestly, "attendance for confessions has doubled, and our donations are through the roof." The elder priest stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Yes, I've noticed. Your efforts haven't gone unappreciated, believe me, but the flashing neon sign on the roof that says, 'Confess and drive away,' well, let's just say it's a bit much." John decided to go golfing in Scotland with his buddy Keith, so they loaded up John's minivan and headed north. After driving for a few hours, they got caught in a terrible blizzard, so they pulled into a nearby farm and asked the attractive lady who answered the door if they could spend the night. "I realize it's terrible weather out there, and I have this huge house all to myself, but I'm recently widowed," she explained. "And I'm afraid the neighbors will talk if I let you stay in my house." "Don't worry," John said. "We'll be happy to sleep in the barn, and if the weather breaks, we'll be gone at first light." The lady agreed, and the two men found their way to the barn and settled in for the night. Come morning, the weather had cleared, and they got on their way and enjoyed a great weekend of golf. But about 9 months later, John got an unexpected letter from an attorney. It took him a few minutes to figure it out, but he finally determined that it was from the attorney of that attractive widow he had met on the golf weekend. He dropped in on his friend Keith and asked, "Keith, do you remember that good-looking widow from the farm we stayed at on our golf holiday in Scotland about 9 months ago?" "Yes, I do," said Keith. "Did you, happen to get up in the middle of the night, go up to the house and pay her a visit?" "Well, yes," Keith said, a little embarrassed about being found out. "I have to admit that I did." "And did you happen to give her my name instead of telling her your name?" Keith's face turned beet red, and he said, "Yeah, look, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm afraid I did. Why do you ask?" "Well, she just died and left me everything." Lawyer, who writes a 15,000-word document and calls it a brief. Accountant, someone who knows the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Auditor, who arrives after the battle and bayonets all the wounded. Banker, he lends you his umbrella when the sun is shining and wants it back the minute it begins to rain. Economist, he will know tomorrow why the things he predicted yesterday didn't happen today. Statistician, someone who is good with numbers but lacks the personality to be an accountant. Actuary, who brings a fake bomb on a plane because that decreases the chances that there will be another bomb on the plane. School teacher, who used to think he or she liked children. Programmer, someone who solves a problem you didn't know you had. in a way you don't understand. Mathematician, who is the blind man in the darkroom looking for the black cat that isn't there? Diplomat, who can tell you to go to hell in such a way that you'll look forward to the trip? Topologist, who doesn't know the difference between a coffee cup and a donut? Professor, who talks in someone else's sleep? Consultant, someone who takes the watch off your wrist and tells you the time. Psychologist, who watches everyone else when a beautiful woman enters the room? Anyone got more? Several men were in the locker room of the gym when a cell phone on a bench rang and a man put it on speaker and begins to talk. Everyone in the room stopped to listen. Man, hello! Woman, hi honey, it's me. Are you at the club? Man, yes. Woman, I'm at the shops now and found this beautiful leather coat. It's only $2,000. Is it okay if I buy it? Man, sure, go ahead if you like that much. Woman, I also stopped by the Lexus dealership and saw the new models. I saw one that I really liked. Man, how much? Woman, $90,000. Man, okay. But for that price, I want it with all options. Woman, great. Oh, and one more thing. I was just talking to Jane and found out that the house I wanted last year is back on market. They are asking $980,000 for it, man. Well, then go ahead and offer $900,000. They'll probably take it. If not, we can go to the extra $80,000 if that's what you really want. Woman, okay, see you later. I love you too much. Man, bye. I love you too. The man hung up. The other men in the locker room were staring at him in astonishment, mouths wide open. He turned and asked, "Anyone knows whose phone is this?" A man is driving through the backwoods of Montana when he spots a sign in front of a rundown shack, "Talking dog for sale." Curious, he knocks on the door. An old-timer answers and tells him the dog is in the backyard. The man steps out back and finds a well-groomed Labrador sitting there. "You talk?" he asks. "Yep," the lab replies. The man's jaw drops. Once he gathers himself, he says, "Okay, what's your story?" The dog sighs and begins, "Well, I discovered I could talk when I was a pup. Figured I should put my gift to good use, so I told the CIA. They immediately recruited me, and before I knew it, I was flying all over the world, sitting in rooms with world leaders and spies. Nobody ever suspected a dog could be eavesdropping. I was their top agent for 8 years, but all the travel wore me out. So I took a job doing undercover security at the airport. I sniffed out smugglers, exposed criminals, and even earned a few medals. Then I met the love of my life, settled down, had a bunch of puppies, and retired. Now I just take it easy." The man is stunned. He hurries back inside and asks the owner, "How much for the dog?" $10, the old man says. $10? This dog is incredible. Why so cheap?" The owner shakes his head. "Because he's a liar. He's never left the yard." A drover walks into a bar with a pet crocodile by his side. He puts the crocodile up on the bar and he turns to the astonished patrons and says, "I'll make you a deal. I'll open the crocodile's mouth and put my manhood inside, and then the crocodile will close its mouth for 1 minute. He will then open his mouth and I'll remove my unit unscathed. In return for witnessing this spectacle, each of you will buy me a drink." The crowd murmured their approval. The drover stood up on the bar and dropped his trousers. He placed his manhood in the crocodile's mouth. The crocodile closed its mouth and the crowd gasped. After a minute, the drover grabbed a beer bottle and smacked the crocodile really, really hard on the top of its head. The croc opened its mouth, and the drover removed his genitals, unscathed as promised. The crowd cheered, and the first of his free drinks was delivered. He stood up again and said, "I'll pay anyone £100 who's willing to give it a try." A hush fell over the crowd. After a while, a hand went up at the back of the bar. A blonde woman timidly spoke up. "I'll try it, but don't hit me so hard with the bottle." 3 technicians guys go into an interview for a job at the local telephone company. They were all 3 great candidates and very well qualified. The boss brings them into the office and says, "Okay, you 3 look the best on paper, but I have to know if you have what it takes for the day-to-day work. So I'm going to give you 1 day to impress me. Set as many telephone poles as you can and report back tomorrow." They all 3 go to work setting poles and return the next day to the boss's office. The boss asks one by one how many they set. The first guy set 13. Wow, 13. That is impressive, the boss tells him happily. The second guy set 9. Well, said the boss, not as good as the first guy, but still it is impressive. He turns to the third guy. How many did you set? The boss asks. 2, the man replies triumphantly, his blonde hair waving in the wind. 2? That's it? The manager was shocked. That's barely any. What were you doing all day? Well, I didn't want to have to be a snitch. But these other guys, they only put theirs halfway in the ground.